Hello and welcome to the T2 Hubcast with me, Bernice Casserly.
And James Cooper.
Hello, James.
Oh, hello, Bernice. How are you?
That was very formal.
Hello.
Hello, James. Otherwise known as Tigger.
Yeah.
I went to Liverpool last week and I was delivering a session to a group and they were talking about you and made reference to just your sheer passion, energy, excitement, and at T2 and elsewhere you are often known as Tigger.
Yeah. So let me just give a little bit of context to that. And it's very relevant to what we see and what we're going to be talking about today, Bernice. Mainly because of the way that I have to think about how I show up above the waterline from a human iceberg point of view. So we've got our traits, characteristics and behaviours that we show people, how we externalise ourselves. Sometimes I know that me being me is a little bit daunting for some people. And I could go full Tigger, if you like, i.e. lots of energy, lots of passion first thing in the morning before people have had the morning coffee. And that's for some people is quite, well, it's not necessarily annoying, but it's quite intense. And people don't necessarily get the best from the communication, the interpersonal relationship, because I'm quite full on. So what I've started to do, Bernice, I think we're going to touch on this again later, is I've actually started to think about how I show up to individuals that we obviously understand from what we're going to talk about today, a social styles point of view, and then obviously how we can sort of make some links to some of the other things we do at T2. So for everybody that's listening, I'm currently oppressing myself, or maybe not oppressing is the right word, maybe just managing myself a little bit better.
You're taming your Tigger.
Yeah, which is a good thing, and understanding that there is certain elements that work best for me, but does that necessarily work for everybody else? And do other people see that and think slightly different? Does it impact the way that people communicate with me? Because obviously, if everybody had the same amount of energy as me, then I'd maybe question whether we actually get anything productive done.
Fun, but quite tiring.
Oh, it'd be amazing, by the way. So what are we talking about today then, Bernice? What is it?
So exactly that. So today's podcast is an opportunity to really think about the different styles of communication. So in social settings, in social environments, what are some of those core traits, characteristics and behaviours, and what are some of the differences there? I'm sure every single person listening to this T2 Hubcast can reflect and think of situations where they've walked into a room and just straight away they've clicked with someone and they've thought, I like you, you're a bit like me, we're going to get on here. But I'm sure you can then flip that at the exact same time and think of situations where you've walked into a room, you've met someone at a barbecue, a family event, a wedding, you've gone into a meeting, you've met a client and immediately thought, oh, I'm not too sure about you. The likelihood is that your social style was potentially complete opposite ends. So we know through the work that we do at T2 that we all have various different unconscious motivators, and we know that through print, and that's what drives our above the waterline service behaviours. And what we can then start to do is understand, well, what does that look like? Because some of us really love to get into the details, and we're in certain situations a little bit calm and reserved and quite composed. But there's other people in this world, and they're a bit like Tigger, and they're excitable, they're personable, they're fun, they're friendly, they want to be involved and connected with other human beings. And you know what? In some situations, they really don't value the details. And you might definitely not describe them as calm and composed as you would this person over here. And this is where social styles comes into play. And it's really important to have awareness of our natural default social style. What does that look like for me? But also as well, is there any value in being able to potentially understand it from other people and to be able to spot that in other people? So, James, your awareness of your natural social style, and of course with the work that we do at T2, predominantly being based around leadership and communication, collaboration and teamwork, what would you describe as the true value and benefit in having awareness of social styles?
So having the awareness, I think the first keyword is awareness of. People will show you these things just by being them.
Yes.
They will show up in a certain way, and they will have conversations in a certain way. There'll be a certain structure for some people. Now, for others, the structure doesn't really matter. The outcomes matter.
Yes.
For other people, it's around the people themselves. It's how people are feeling. It's how, as an organisation, we deal with people, or how we interact, or that actual way of working, if you like. But I've done this before, where I've sat in, obviously, when we're travelling up and down the country, I've sat in like canteens and just be aware I'm watching you. And it is to really pick up on some of the things we're going to talk about today. I pick up on what people are talking about. What are the things that, are people even talking, or are people very reserved and not necessarily saying, look, they're doing a lot of listening, taking in the information, processing it in the brain, and then making comment? Or is it that you've got a load of people just like a goose hut, if you like, and it's just craziness? And we'll see what sort of things that looks like. But we can talk about this from a professional point of view. So how people show up on emails, some of the structures that they have in place. And then there's other ways of, well, in a meeting, how do you show up, Bernice? And then how do Martin and Tracy and the other T2 team, do they sit there and don't say anything until they have a real salient point that they've really had to think about, to then go, that's my point I want to make, okay? And then obviously we have some people that are really quite annoyed that they have to sit in a meeting because they're too busy trying to get things done. Yeah. You've given my 3 bullet points, off you go. Why are you slowing me down? Okay. Yeah. And that's where you can see levels of frustration, and people have these things called facial fireworks. Yeah. I have them quite a lot, where even though I'm quite frustrated and I can try to hold it in, when really it shows up with this little red vein that pops out the side of my head, and I'm going, wow, we've already spoken about this 4 times. The same thing happens when maybe talking about things that I don't have an impact on. Yes. And I'm in a meeting that I don't necessarily need to be in. Mm-hmm. And that could be, I could show up in a totally different way there.
Yes.
I could be getting frustrated, but how do we as individuals externalize that to other people, and what can people pick up on? What can people be aware of?
Yeah.
So let's start getting into it, Bernice. What are the things that we need to be aware of? What are these 4 social styles that we need to be aware of?
So spot on. So there's 4 of them. So there's 4 different social styles. But if we kind of almost take a mini kind of sidestep back and think about, well, where does all of this come from as well? So so many personality tools, tests that you can do online typically form a connection to this the social styles framework, and it's been around for quite some time. So it was developed by Marilyn Reed back in the 1950s, so quite a few years ago now. But it also shows that the sheer value in this model is the fact that it's been around for quite some time now. And their work is focused on the core different characteristics of communication, often referred to as styles of communication or social styles. And it's based on 2 key functions or dimensions, which is your level of assertiveness in social situations and also your level of responsiveness.
Interested.
So what then happens is you can do a little kind of test and a little questionnaire. So there's various ones available out there, but for those of us who are clients of T2, then we do have a survey available on the survey section of the T2 Hub. And what you can do is a really quick test, and it will help identify what your natural default social style is. So there's 4 of them, as James, you just suggested there. If we start off by just going through each of them and really think about, well, what does this look like? What are some of the core standard traits and characteristics? Starting with the analytical.
So analyticals, for what we see in the workshops and what we see from a social styles point of view, these people are heavily detail orientated, like to have lots of information, and you could maybe characterize them, and we obviously with the model that we use as well, it can be that they can be quite risk averse. So they don't necessarily like taking risks. They actually like to have the information to make informed decisions. They're very structured, and they talk. When we see this in workshops, Bernice, the biggest thing that I hear, and this is the important bit, the biggest thing that I hear is people from an analytical social style talking about processes, the way that things are done, not just the outcomes, not just the people that are involved, and not just the idea generation. It's, do we have the information, and can we follow a process to achieve the result? Yes. Now, that's the one-liner for me. Yeah. It's the process to achieve a result. It's not necessarily about getting to the result at the quickest time. It's about getting to the result in the best way, not necessarily the quickest time. So understanding that provides that when people are talking, if they're talking about somebody's role or the way that things are done or how we need to gather information first, or do you have this bit of information that could support this process or this sort of way that we work? Well, let's think about that, because if people are talking about that, that's what they need. They're probably from a analytical social style point of view.
Yeah, so some of the core traits that you're going to be able to see in other people is they're going to, in certain situations, they need time to think things through because they're process focused. They definitely thrive and love to get into the detail. When it comes to decision making, they will explore facts and figures, data, where's the evidence, in order for me to achieve the result and get that done the right way or get it done right first time. I need to go through this process. From again, thinking from communication, this is sometimes someone who will give you all of the information that they have and maybe then even question to seek to find the information they don't have.
This is where I found it, and you could look at somebody's email structure.
100%.
Because if you get, there's that one person that sends everything, and this is absolutely all of the detail around, and I've only asked them how the day was. Yeah. And it's, this is this, and then I've been doing this around this, and this is but what the outcomes that we're trying to achieve on here, following this process. And I'm going, I only asked you for one thing.
Yes.
And you've given me so much detail that realistically, I'm not going to read that.
Yeah. And one thing to bear in mind and consider as well is I'm going to jump on one little sentence that you said there, James. I only asked for one thing. So this is then where for every single, no matter what your natural default style is, this is when frustrations in teams occur, because this is where we've got two people with two different styles. Someone who really values logic, quality results, lots of information, lots of detail, and then you've got someone over here and they're like, yeah, I don't care for that. Just tell me what I want, tell me what I need, and then let's crack on. Which would lead us nicely onto the next social style, which is referred to as the driving or driver.
Yeah, so and obviously some of this is a sliding scale. So you will see lots of you'll see parts of all of the social styles. But this is really suggesting that there's one that you actually prefer to be, the one that you actually enjoy being a part of. So analytical for me, by the way, no, not. I really struggle with it. It's not saying I can't do it, but I have to really put myself in a quite specific environment with no distractions so that then I can be analytical. Driving, on the other hand, if you need to get something done, drivers are the people you go to. They are outcome focused. They are people that you give them 3 bullet points. They don't need all the detail. They'll probably sort of shoot from the hip, if you like, and be able to make decisions quickly, fast paced. It's not taking weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. It's you've given me the detail, just enough, not too much. Now let me go. Yes. Get in, get out, get gone. Yeah. And that's the idea, and that's where potentially some of the frustration comes from when we look at social styles and how they connect. Yes. So, but just to provide, that's some of the maybe potential frustrations, but understanding that these two social styles, analytical and drivers, are definitely results orientated.
100% results orientated, goal focused, outcome focused, but different ways in which they go about it. So analytical is very much, let's make sure we get it done the right way. The driver, let's jump in, crack on, let's see what happens. You know what? If it doesn't work, we don't get it right first time. That's okay, because we've got really good ability to make really quick on-the-spot decisions, and we can shift and adapt and go in a different journey, a different route if that happens.
To achieve the goal.
In order to achieve the goal. And I often think there's always one phrase that comes into mind when I think of the driver, and immediately I come back to someone that I used to work for a few years ago who was a driver through and through, and she always had a catchphrase at the end of our meeting, or once she had the information that she needed and she was on board, she would always say, "Sounds great, yeah, okay, let's crack on." And that, I think, just perfectly sums it up. And it literally was, she had the information that she needed. She was no longer had any interest in continuing this conversation because there was no value or benefit. So it's a case of, yep, sounds great. Let's crack on. Let's get stuff done.
And it's interesting how people communicate that back. And imagine if there's somebody sat listening to the podcast now thinking, yeah, I've got somebody that says that. Well, potential, and we're not making assumptions, by the way, because you obviously need to do the questionnaire and fill out the survey, but understanding that sometimes people are showing you these things. Drivers will show you that they're getting a little bit annoyed being sat here now. Yes. You've given the information, and they're not being rude. Yeah. They're just doing things in their way.
Definitely.
Okay? So that's maybe one of the things. Now, for other people, that can be seen as pushy.
Yes. So this is where we get into the realms of those core traits, characteristics and behaviours of someone being a little bit of a risk taker, outcome focused, action orientated. Their emails might be more straight to the point because they don't value all of the details. They just so focused on the outcome. It's a, hi, this is what I need. Here's an update on X, Y, and Z. Cheers, bye. There's no kind of friendliness or chattiness, potentially. This is when someone else may perceive them as blunt, rude, pushy, controlling, and this is where we then enter into potential challenges.
Now, just on that, it's about drivers being drivers. Drivers need to be aware of that.
Definitely.
Analyticals need to be aware of their superpowers, if you like, the way that they do things. Yeah. Now, there's a difference. Now, when we go down to the next two, that's where we start to get into a bit more of the relationship-focused type social styles. But this isn't saying just because you're a driver, you can just go and drive and be you. It's about that consideration for others.
And how do others see you? So coming back to the analytical, quality focused, logical, very kind of good at kind of exploring that process as we described it. But other people, the expressive, for example, could look at someone who's analytical and think, oh my goodness, why on earth do they take so long just to make a decision? Because they're looking at it from a different angle.
Yeah, and think about that. So from an expressive, let's dig into that. So expressive social style, showing up as expressive myself. We've already done quite a lot of detail on what that looks like for me. So that energy, excitement, a little bit of that sort of idea generation, if you like.
Definitely. There's a level of creativity at times.
Creativity, but we're not talking about little things here, Bernice. We're talking about big things that can really push us and have an impact on the wider audience, the bigger picture things.
Yes, big picture thinking.
Because I'm not even like listening to this podcast. The reason I love doing the podcast is because it reaches out to so many other people that could listen to something, make a link, and then go, you know what, I'm going to go and try that. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go and listen. I'm going to look at the email structures that I've got on for the people that I report into or people that report into me. And I'm going to look at it from a social styles point of view and go, you know what are they actually showing me?
Yes. And if anyone was to ever wonder, well, how would I potentially, if I walked in a room or went into a meeting, spot someone who was expressive? I just want to describe visually what I've just been witnessing through this podcast. And it's something that I do myself. So as James was talking now, I was just kind of looking across the room at him. And with every word and every sentence, there's an arm to the left with a nice big hand. There's an arm to the right. There's a point of the finger. There's a movement over here. And as you said earlier, those facial fireworks were in full flow. Because as the name of that social style is, they're very expressive, and I clock myself, I'm doing it right now, in their hand gestures and their movements, because naturally this is someone who does openly express their feelings and emotions, and that's typically is something that you see and hear at times.
Especially when me and you were sat in the podcast
room.
Oh, I
know, there's hand gestures going all over the room. So sticking with those social styles that are more geared towards being connected with other human beings and relationships, that will then moves us into the fourth and final social style, which is, James?
Amiable or amiable, whichever way you want to talk about it.
Yeah, there's always debate over, is it amiable, is it amiable? And sometimes in workshops, people get a little bit scared because they don't know which one to go for.
I think it depends where you are in the country.
Definitely does.
So talking about an amiable social style then, then we start to think about support, care, looking at other people's opinions, trying to listen to others, really good at the humanistic side of things, where they can, and I've even changed the way that I'm speaking now, because it is, the way that they speak is slightly different to somebody who's a driver who wouldn't necessarily consider the relationship bits in their being their authentic self. But you've got people that are more relationship focused, and it's about doing things for others. It's about people.
Yeah, they're supportive, kind, caring. And you know what? In certain situations, they will quite happily put other people above themselves, because in their world, they just they're giving, and they're just really nice people and just really good team players.
And there's an element of when people are showing up and they are of an amiable social style, you can literally count the number of times they use language that is in relation to people. So we, the team, my team, us, they, we, and you could go on, but it's about how that team dynamic works and what works best for the people. So understanding that if you've got somebody that is mentioning about how they are feeling, how maybe the team is feeling, you can't just wipe that to the side with a big brush. You've got to consider it. And if you don't, they're going to bring that up anyway. They're going to bring up a person, they're going to bring up a story, they're going to bring up a story about others. It's not just about them. In fact, the last person they probably say yes to is themselves, if you like, because it is about other people. And that conversation, it's interesting when we do this in the workshops, and obviously reach out to T2 and go through the website for that. If you wanted to look into social styles for your full team, for your full organisation, then obviously reach out to T2 and we can get that organised. But when we do the workshop, you can see that they're just having a real nice time talking to each other.
Yeah, they love it.
And it's like, you enjoyed that? Did you enjoy that? And they've gone, oh, it's just nice to chat to someone. Yeah. he's really good. So imagine in obviously in modern times, after sort of the blended working environment, if you like, and people working from home and not necessarily being in the office, for an amiable social style, that could have caused quite big rifts.
Yeah, because they want to be around other people, and they like to be around other people as well. Just what you said there made me giggle. It took me back to a few years ago now. I was supporting some people who were delivering some training, and we were doing social styles, and I loved it because there was possibly about 20 people, I would say. And it was quite a fairly even split across social styles. And I gave them the opportunity just to kind of sit and just have a discussions around what does this actually look like for me? And I gave them all flip chart paper, and this is something that we do at T2 as well, is write down what does this look like, and what are some of those kind of traits and characteristics and behaviours that others may see from you. And I loved it with a big group of people because it was so funny. You saw it all coming out. So the Amiables, as you described it there, James, they grabbed chairs, they turned all of their chairs into a circle, and they just sat down, and it was a really supportive conversation where everyone took it in turns to speak, and it was they were asking questions and really listening to each other. The analytical people were very much focused on the task. They were a little bit slower to put put pen to paper because they're very much focused on talking and thinking at the start of the session or activity. They're all stood there thinking about what they're going to do and how they're going to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say that is about the how, right?
How are we going to do this?
Yeah.
Have we understood the task and what we need to do correctly? And typically sometimes they ask a question. I remember then looking over at the drivers and just they were the first to put pen to paper. It was a case of one person took charge and said, right, okay, I'll be the person with the pen. And they just started writing, and they were the first to finish as well because they got the job done really quickly. Get job done. We can just sit down and chat now. The expressives, lots of laughter, lots of chatter, got a little bit distracted, and then 10 minutes later asked a question, what are we supposed to be doing again? Because we're having a great time over here, but we've forgotten about it.
So I've gone off task a little bit.
Definitely. So it's really good to, in those different environments, but especially when we're splitting people down into social styles, really great to spot it. But I suppose a question to every single person listening to this is really think about the people that you work with on a regular basis. What specifically is it that you see from them, and potentially what style might it be? One thing to bear in mind as well is that for some of us, it might be that we have a blend, or we can shift and adapt across two different styles. Would you agree with that?
So I've already mentioned a little bit about the analytical social style that I find quite difficult. In my best self, and when I'm feeling pretty good, I can flex and I can go to amiable. I can be nice and supportive, and I can really help. Yes. And then if I need to get the target and the outcome, I can definitely switch and get to that driving social style. But if I'm being my authentic self, if I'm being me, I can go right to expressive. I can sit there all day. Yeah. But if I have to be analytical and get into the data, I need to understand at what cost. Yes. Because it's not at a cost to other people, because I'm trying to do the best by others. I'm trying to get that balance between not just going right out my comfort zone and maybe being quite difficult to get along with, but what I am doing is I'm stepping into your world as analytical to give you the detail that you need so I can get the best from you. Yeah. Now, if I'm then thinking, what happens to me? Well, I need to understand that if I do that, I'm going to be shattered. I'm going to be tired. My head's going to be hurting because it's just not how I work.
It's not your natural energy to use, is it?
It really isn't. And that's maybe the point for everybody, is that just because you come out as a driver doesn't mean you can't be nice to people and provide support and be amiable. Mm-hmm. Just because you're a driver doesn't mean you can't be analytical, and it doesn't mean you can't be expressive. It means everybody can do all of them, but it is going to have an impact on your energy, or maybe some of the levels of, you might even make mistakes in those different areas, but it's about you getting the balance between what is good for you and what is good for the person that you are communicating to. Because if I just be an expressive, I can annoy people. You give me that flip chart and I want 15 different coloured pens, 5 flip charts, and we go crazy. But for an analytical to go, that's not the way to do it.
So unstructured. What the hell are they doing?
You're annoying me now.
Yeah.
But so it's about getting that level of, I don't just talk to people the way that I want to be spoken to. I speak to people the way that, not fully making it look unauthentic and phony, if you like, but it's about meeting halfway, about getting that balance between, this is how I want to do things. I know that this is based on what you've shown me, how you've shown up. This is what I'm sort of thinking you like to do. Can you just clarify that for me? And they go, right, where's the best ground? Where's the middle ground, if you like? So that then our interpersonal relationship is really quite effective. I don't annoy you too much, and you don't annoy me too much. And we actually get things done effectively, so that then you can move on with the rest of your day, move on to the next one. And then, by the way, you're with somebody else, and it's a totally different way of thinking.
Definitely. And I think if you just pause and think, some of the very best communicators and collaborators, and for those for our listeners right now, think of that person that comes to mind when you think of, you know what, they get on really well with so many people, they're really productive, and you know what, I feel good when I'm around them. the likelihood is that they are very good at naturally being able to adjust their social style, because we all have a blend of all four of these within us, but we have different levels. And in order to get the very best, the strongest working relationships, collaboration and teamwork in any environment, we need to be able to switch and adapt. So I think just a few final points for us. I think it might be good just to very quickly think about if we're able to spot each of these styles, just a quick point on how we need to adapt and make the best connection from them. So, for example, someone who's analytical, focus on the facts, focus on the details, provide the information that they need. If you need to make a decision, give them time to process it and think about it.
Now, sometimes life kicks in, by the way.
Yes.
So there is a level of, we understand that sometimes there is time frames in place.
Yes.
But understand it's the most time you can give them.
Definitely.
Within the remit. You can't just go, well, we're not going to get an answer back for 2 weeks. Well, the deadline's on Friday. What are you doing?
Yes, definitely. The driver, if you're working with someone who has a driving style, stick to the key facts. What's the information that they need to know? They don't value all of the details, solutions, not problems. Sometimes as well, almost kind of keep up the energy and keep up the pace. So is it that when you're on a meeting with them, you're speaking to them, their natural pace in their voice is a little bit quicker than perhaps someone who's analytical because they need more time to think? Match that, because that's going to kind of match that energy. Someone who is amiable, really focus on just kind of softening your language and approach at times so that you don't get perceived as, potentially if you're a driver, bossy, blunt, or a little bit too direct. That is not your intention. And also, if you are naturally amiable and that's how you view someone who is a driver, the likelihood that there's no personal attack or intent there, it's just you viewing things from that different view and perspective.
And approach conflict carefully, by the way.
Definitely. If you have someone in your team and you need to deliver some feedback, I've got lots of podcasts on that topic itself, but if you need to deliver some feedback, really think about how are you going to have that conversation, because naturally that is going to be something that they will find quite difficult. So we really need to think about our approach there. And in meetings, in social situations, ask questions and get them involved, because they will be the people who will sit back and listen to everyone first. Sometimes we need to get them involved. And last and finally, the expressive, again, keep up the energy, keep up the pace, engaging them. I think as well, in certain situations, if you do need specific information or a decision to be made, maybe use less open questions and more closed questions.
Yeah, be very clear.
Very clear and concise,
want.
so they don't get distracted. And James, you mentioned something just a moment ago, and I just want to kind of finish this podcast by coming back to that, which is, I'm sure for everyone listening, so often, and if you're a parent listening, how many times have you said this to your kids? Treat other people how you want to be treated yourself. But the reality is, we're all different. We have so many different ways in which we like to operate and communicate. In truth, what we need to do is treat others how they want to be treated.
And then even going into that communication bit, communicate with people the way that they want to be communicated to.
Definitely.
Save your time, be more productive, and go and enjoy it. Have some fun with it as well. It's quite interesting.
Definitely, yeah. Try it, mix it up, and just see how better you can build some of those connections with the people that you work with, because the likelihood is that you will be able to do so. So, James, I know that we've got a really busy morning, so we're going to pause this podcast. But for anyone who has found this a bit of an interesting topic, then please reach out to us at T2. We've got loads of additional resources, and we've got the survey available on the T2 Hub. So thank you very much. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
And we'll be back soon for another T2 Hubcast.
See you soon.